कृष्ण स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण इह 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 स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण भोगदाप्त सुलभा सुपुष्पगन्धकलभा भोगदाप्त सुलभा सुपुष्पगन्धकलभा भोगदाप्त सुलभा सुपुष्पगन्धकलभा भोगदाप्त सुलभा सुपुष्पगन्धकलभा कस्तूरी तिलक महिमा मम कान्तनन्द गोवनन्द भोगदाप्त सुलभा सुपुष्पगन्धकलभा कस्तूरी तिलक महिमा मम कान्तनन्द गोवनन्द स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मथुरा पुरी सदन मृदुवदन मधुसूदन इह स्वागतं कृष्ण शरणागतं कृष्ण मुष्टिकाशूरचाणूरमल्ल मल्ल विशारद मधुसूदन मुष्टिकाशूरचाणूरमल्ल मल्ल विशारद मधुसूदन मुष्टिकाशूरचाणूरमल्ल मल्ल विशारद मधुसूदन मुष्टिकाशूरचाणूरमल्ल मल्ल विशारद कुवलया पीठमर्दन कलिङ्गनर्तन गोकुलरक्षण सकल सुलक्षण देव मर्दन कलिङ्गनर्तन गोकुलरक्षण सकल सुलक्षण देव शिष्ट जनपाल संकल्प कल्प कल्प शतकोटि असम फल తగదరి కుకుతణ కిటతగది తగదరి కుకుతణ కిటతగ స్వాగతం కృష్ణ శరణాగతం కృష్ణ మధురాపురి సదనా మృదువదనా మధుసూదన ఇహ స్వాగతం కృష్ణ శరణాగతం కృష్ణ
Honorable Minister, External Affairs, His Excellency Dr. S. Jaishankar. Honorable High Commissioner, His Excellency Shri Binya Pradhanji. Representatives from communities and fellow friends from diaspora. Namaste. Malai Vanakkam. Good evening. Dobriye Vesher. Konnichiwa. Udzovet. I'm trying my best to offer all these greetings in multiple languages that Dr. Jaishankar speaks. Thank God he decided to stop at 7. Sir, this know-how about you, although gathered from the internet, is not trivia. It's beyond that. With keen interest and passion, you are Googled, searched, and followed on YouTube, Reels, clips, and shorts, and Instagram. You have an absolute fan club here. Sir, this intensity of emotions is not without reason. We have seen you embody the idea of India. We have seen you express it eloquently, and we have seen you defend it with fortitude. And in all honesty, we have marveled at the range of expressions varying when unfairly provoked with a muh-tod jawab, and equally responding when rightly invoked with muh mein ghee shakkar. India had cricket fans, India had Bollywood fans, and we happen to know you follow both of them. But who could have thought and imagined that one day, pretty much single-handedly, you'll create a fan following of diplomacy and foreign policy. This is definitely a new India. As we all wait eagerly to hear you, I will not shy away from saying on behalf of the audience that this audience today absolutely loves and adores you. We feel both inspired and vibrantly alive as Indians every time we get to hear you. Dear friends, Embassy of India in Tanzania, Embassy of India in Tanzania, Embassy of India in Tanzania has been both a platform and guiding force that has brought us together in every sphere of life, be it cultural, economical, and celebration of our own roots. Honorable High Commissioner has both facilitated and curated many such occasions. I'll request him to once again set
Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, members of parliament, former members of parliament, leaders of Indian diaspora, leaders of Indian business community, students from various schools who are seated at the balcony over there. Ladies and gentlemen, namaskar, a very good evening. Let me begin by thanking the various Indian communities who have worked very hard to organize this event today. My sincere thanks and appreciation to each one of you. Today we are honored to have External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar with us. I don't think he needs an introduction, but my friend C.B. Pathak gave a very befitting introduction to Honorable Minister. Very often I receive social media posts sent by many of you about what is said in international forums, what is said on domestic issues, and I think it's already reflected that how popular the posts are here in this community. But let me say a little bit about the visit of Honorable Minister this time. You would be happy to know that this is visit of an Indian Foreign Minister after 20 years to Tanzania. And Honorable Minister landed in Zanzibar yesterday. Besides meeting the President of Zanzibar, Speaker and several other ministers in Zanzibar, he also attended a reception at the Indian Naval Ship INS Trishul, which is visiting Tanzania for joint maritime exercises. Yesterday, President of Zanzibar and Honorable Minister, they witnessed signing of the historic MOU to set up offshore campus of IIT Madras in Zanzibar. Tomorrow, Honorable Minister would be chairing a business roundtable for which a 40-member senior business delegation from India is visiting Dar es Salaam. Of course, he will be meeting the leadership of Tanzania and several other ministers in the mainland, among several other activities. So friends, today, exactly, I think 4 hours back, we were walking down the lanes of Stone Town, and Honorable Minister was meeting and talking to several Zanzibaris who are of Indian origin. And many of them were 5th generation, many of them were 4th generation. And for me, it was an emotional moment, a testimony of a 200 years of friendship between India and Zanzibar, or for that matter, India and Tanzania. You are all part of that legacy, you are all part of that rich tradition of friendship between India and Tanzania. Sir, today, due to space constraint, we had to restrict the number of people who can come to your event. Otherwise, many more friends wanted to join us today. Many more friends are actually seated in the next room listening to you live. On behalf of the entire Indian community, I welcome you to Dar es Salaam, and now I would request you to come and address the gathering.
Thank you. Hi, Commissioner. Hi, Commissioner. Dear friends, let me begin by saying what a great pleasure it is to be with all of you as soon as I arrived in Dar es Salaam about 2 hours ago. I must tell you, whenever I travel out, I of course make it a point to meet the Indian community wherever I go. But I do so because every time I meet the Indian community abroad, your achievements, your successes, your reputation are a source of strength for me, for India. And that meeting is actually a kind of a energy absorption experience. So I'm really very, very pleased that I'm actually beginning my visit to Dar es Salaam with this meeting. And I must also thank the young members of community whose talent was on display. It was very good to see our culture, our traditions, our arts so well presented, and that too is something which I would like to appreciate. This is my second visit to Tanzania. I came here 7 years ago with Prime Minister Modi when he came on a visit. That was a brief visit, but a very, very memorable visit. I think a lot of there was an understanding, a set of understandings there. I think there was a focus on that relationship. And in many ways, I would say it gave us a context, and it's for the development of the goals which were set forth then that I'm here today. Now, between that visit in 2016 and my being with you here, I must also share with you that, as a government, we are regularly in touch with our counterpart, with our colleagues in Tanzania. I myself, for example, I will be meeting my new counterpart, the foreign minister, tomorrow. But the previous foreign minister, I had actually met her, I think 3 times in the last year, if my memory serves me right. And a number of other exchanges have taken place, including the visit of our speaker, Om Birla ji, who was here, I think at the beginning of this year. And I can assure you that this exchange at a high level, you will see more of it. And certainly as a community which is invested in this relationship, you will be encouraged by its growth and progress in the coming times. Now, I should also say that, we in India, you all know this better, that we have a particular, we have a strong relationship with Africa. It is something which partly comes out of our shared struggle for freedom during the colonial period. But within that, we have a particularly close connection with East Africa. And again, within that, I think some parts of India are particularly closely linked. And I would, without I would say playing favorites, I would very objectively mention that the state which I have the honor to represent in Parliament, the state of Gujarat, is one which has a very strong link. Now, I of course saw a lot of that personally in Zanzibar in the last 24 hours that I spent there. High Commissioner mentioned that. But I also know that as communities go, that the Indian community in Tanzania has been really a very community with a very strong history, which has made an enormous contribution. And one reflection of that is the fact that this is a community which boasts of multiple Pravasi Bharatiya Samman awardees, and that is also something I would like to recognize. Now, I spoke about our relationship with Africa, with East Africa, and with Tanzania in particular. And the heart of this relationship is actually a certain solidarity of spirit, of outlook that we have had for many, many years. This in Tanzania goes back to the era of President Nyerere. But over the years, it is expressed in different forums. We have what is called, we speak of Global South today. We are developing countries who have tried to work together for a fairer global order. So it could be, in the non-aligned movement. It could be in groups like what is called the G77, in the United Nations, in a summit which we regularly hold with Africa, and most recently in a meeting which Prime Minister Modi summoned as part of our G20 presidency called the Voice of Global South Summit, and Tanzania was one of the many countries which took part in it. Now, before I speak to you about the relationship, because it's very important that you as the Indian community here understand what is happening between India and Tanzania. Because you are yourself an expression of that relationship, but you are also a contributor, you are a force of that relationship. So I certainly would like to take today's opportunity to apprise you of those developments. But when I speak of our relationship with Africa, I want to underline that if you look at the world, we have completed 75 years of our independence. Now, in the last 75 years, starting with India's independence, a lot of other parts of the world also started fighting and getting their independence. So, our independence actually triggered what was a global development, and that was particularly important for Africa because at that time Africa was occupied by the colonial powers. And when we speak today of how we want a better world, a fairer world, a more equal world, this applies to Africa as well. So our rise, today we are the 5th largest economy in the world, we are the most populous country in the world, we are a source of technology, we are a source of technology in the world. You could see that during COVID. We are in many ways in different areas pioneers of what is happening, particularly in the digital domain. We today want to see Africa grow. We want to see African economies grow, and our approach to Africa today is to trade more with Africa, to invest in Africa, to work with Africa, to create capacities in Africa, so that the rise of Africa also takes place as countries like India are rising in Asia. And when in this matter, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken particular interest. In fact, after he became Prime Minister, he decided that we should have a much deeper diplomatic presence in Africa. So he's approved that we establish 18 new embassies here. So we are actually today one of the countries which has the maximum number of embassies across African countries. But it isn't only in diplomats. We have also increased today our development partnership with Africa, and the difference that we have brought is about 5 years ago, Prime Minister Modi, speaking in the Ugandan parliament, actually spoke about India's approach to Africa. And our approach was that what we would do in partnership with African countries is something which would be as per the preference, as per the choice, as per the priorities of our partner. We are not here as an extractive economy. We are not here in the manner in which a lot of other countries are there for very narrow economic objectives. For us, this is a broader, deeper partnership, and that is something which I am here to demonstrate during my visit. Now, if you ask me in 2 words to describe what am I doing here, my 2 words is, I'm here on an IT mission. IT mission as in India, Tanzania. And that IT mission addresses some of the most, I would say, important priorities of this country today. So let me, for example, share with you what I did today. I went in Zanzibar to a place called Kidutani, where there is a water project, and this water project, when it is, this set of water projects, because there are multiple projects in Zanzibar, when it is completed, will provide drinking water to 1 million people in Zanzibar. Now, if I were to give you the whole project, that project, if you look at the mainland as well, it actually covers 28 towns in Tanzania. Tomorrow I will be going to Kibamba, where I will actually see people, meet people who are beneficiaries of this water supply. And when we are finished with this project, and this is, I would say, probably, I'm sure, almost certainly our largest project in Africa, we would actually be bringing drinking water to 8 million people in this country. So, for all of you, as members of the Indian community living in Tanzania, working in Tanzania, visiting Tanzania, I think you can hold your head high that our friendship, our relationship, our partnership today will make a difference to the everyday life of a Tanzanian. Now, why are we doing it? I mean, obviously we are doing it because we believe that this is a very practical, very relevant expression of our capacities, of Tanzanian needs, and how the two come together. But it is also happening because in India, at the same time, we have something called the Jal Jeevan Mission. The Jal Jeevan Mission is a mission which Prime Minister Modi has put his heart and soul into this, which is that he has promised that he will provide clean drinking water to every household in India. And there are today 194 million households, and we have already done 124 million households. So what we are doing in our partnership with Tanzania is actually a reflection of what we are also doing at home. And the changes that we are bringing about at home, the capacities that we are creating, the capability that we can now bring to the global stage, that is what actually you are seeing in terms of our water mission in this country. So, and I'm giving you this as one example, because in the 54 countries of Africa and many other countries, in fact, across the world today, there are 78 countries where we have some kind of development project of some scale. This one in Tanzania is particularly big because it involves an outlay of $1 billion. But if I were to look across the world, we have done or are working right now on almost 600 projects. And pretty much a large part of the world where I go today, I actually can see practical examples of what it is to have a relationship with India. And this is today actually how the world also sees India. World sees India as a contributor. World sees India, Indian companies, Indian technologies, Indian capacities as helping to create better lives for them. Now, let me give you another example, a very different domain. Tomorrow I will also be visiting the Dar es Salaam Information Institute of Technology. And there we have provided the Param supercomputer. And we had also provided a similar computer in Arusha. Or there's, in the field of health, we some years ago gave a Bhabatron, which is used for health. It's a radiological machine, and that is installed in Mwanza. So I cite this to you today, that whether it is something as basic as water, or something as important as health, or something as really inspiring and relevant as computation, technology, and this time IT means information technology. In all these fields, in some form, our relationship, our partnership is coming into play. Now, there can be many other variations of it, because the products which India is making, the services that India is providing today, are being increasingly recognized. I mean, I was talking to you about health. I think probably in the next few months, we have committed to providing 10 ambulances as a expression of friendship from India. But on a sort of, I would say, not routine basis, but on a regular basis, today our buses, our trucks are used by the police force here. They're used by the defense forces here. And we have actually today active discussion on what is it that India can do, or a partnership with India can do to help build a stronger relationship in this country, to meet the aspirations and the targets of the Tanzanian system. Now, I am speaking to you mainly of goods or services, but none of these work if you don't have the human resources to go with it. And here too, I must share with you a very good story, that as I look across Africa, the largest capacity building and exchange program we have with any country in Africa is actually with Tanzania. That every year, I mean, this year we are giving to the Tanzanian government for their usage 450 scholarships under what's called the ITEC program. This is our traditional exchange program. 230 slots for defense training, and under the education exchanges, 70 scholarships. So the point I make is, it's one thing to speak about solidarity, to talk about friendship, to say we have a good relationship. I am sharing with you what we do in the government, what we do in the foreign ministry. That how do I express this friendship in very practical terms, in very relevant terms, in a way in which the country in which all of you live in, that country can say, okay, these are measurable metrics. This is really what the friendship of India today means. And I see, yesterday at Zanzibar, I was discussing with the Speaker of the Zanzibar House of Representatives, a college in, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Delhi. There is a college called ARSD College in Dholakwan. He studied there. My school was very close by. So we actually discussed which bus we took to reach there and what was the the shopping center there. But he was not an isolated case. I mean, in the course of 24 hours, I must tell you, I would have met at least 10 people. 4 or 5 of them ministers in the Zanzibar government, who had studied in India, trained in India, had exchanges in India. And, their impressions, their memories, their sentiment for India was something which felt very good. And those are really the expressions of as I say, of what a partnership is. And in fact, when I was looking, preparing for my call on Her Excellency the President, I noticed that she too had spent some time in the National Institute of Rural Development in Hyderabad, where, by the way, people in the foreign service, when we join, we also go there for our training. So I intend to tell her that we are alumni from the same place. So I cite that to you, that today our bonds are really very, very strong. Now, High Commissioner mentioned to you that we had yesterday an opportunity, the President of Zanzibar came for a reception on board a naval ship that had come into Zanzibar. I think it's coming in tomorrow here to Dar es Salaam, the INS Trishul. Now, the visits even in a field like defense, because, every country has development needs, but every country also has security concerns. So how can we be of support when it comes to security? This is also something which is a very natural expectation of India from our partners. Now, I point to you, this ship has come. A few months ago, we had another ship called Tarkash, which had come and actually done an exercise. For the first time, we had an exercise between India, Tanzania, and Mozambique. But one part of it is to exercise for the armed forces, to know each other, to improve each other, because that's what exercises do. But the other part is actually actively working to support each other. The Indian Navy, for example, has done hydrographic surveys so that the key ports of Tanzania, every country needs a good hydrographic survey to actually understand their own waters and their own coastal areas and their own economic zones. So that is also something which we have done here. And just like I said, as with the ministers, even in the military, a lot of the Tanzanian military actually has done its training in India. I think the Army Chief and the Defense Secretary are both alumni of Indian institutions. So I stress this because today our relationship is maturing. There is a very deep systemic contact between us. There are enormous possibilities of where this relationship can go. And that brings me to actually the agreement which was signed yesterday. All of you would have heard of the Indian Institute of Technology. These are the most famous technology institutes in India. I would say probably they are, if not the best brand of India, among the best brands of India. Everywhere in the world, there is, the global tech world knows it, the global business world knows it. If somebody says, I am from IIT or I studied in IIT, that is a statement in itself. Now, as part of our new education policy, we decided, the government decided, that we will actually take the IIT out in the world. We will allow the IITs, we will encourage the IITs to establish campuses abroad. And the first campus that we have agreed to set up is the one which was signed yesterday in Zanzibar. And this is being done by IIT Madras. And you can expect in the coming months and years that this institution, which we are very confident would become a pan-African institution, that it will really be a statement, in a way, both a statement of what India is capable of, but also an expression of our relationship with Tanzania and Africa. And there's a particular reason why we chose Zanzibar for it. Because if one looks today at Africa, Zanzibar is a very natural selection if you think of where does India meet Africa. That meeting point, that confluence which is in many ways expressed by the Indian community in Tanzania and in Zanzibar. So we felt the location was very appropriate for an institution like this. It would truly be, it will not only be an international institution, but it will be located at a venue which would encourage that kind of international feeling. I think all of you should watch the growth of this institution. I can tell you, particularly after my talk yesterday with the President of Zanzibar, I can see how deeply they are committed to making this successful. I also had a chance to meet some of the people from IIT Madras who will be running this institution. So this is something that you should look forward to. By the way, I must tell you that while IIT is a very special case, we are doing, we did something similar in a different field a few months ago. We had, there's a very famous university in India, in Gujarat, which was actually set up personally at the, I would say it was the idea of Prime Minister Modi when he was Chief Minister. This was a forensics university. So Gujarat actually has a very successful, the first forensics university in India. And there was a big demand for forensics in Africa. So we actually had the campus of the forensic university set up in Uganda. I was there a few weeks ago to inaugurate that as well. So you can see today, an India which is making an educational, technical, technological impact in terms of our ties with Africa. Now, where do we go from here? One, of course, I spoke about, our interest that we trade more, we invest more, and here we look forward to all of it. Because when it comes to economic cooperation all over the world, now many of you would have seen Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to the United States, right? So you would have seen it in social media, you would have maybe seen it on television. Why has our relationship with the United States changed so much? Why is it so good today? There are many reasons. But one very important reason is the Indian community in America. The Indian community has created a different image of India. It has actually acted as a bridge between the two countries. And that is something in different ways is actually happening across the world. That very often, as I said, for me, meeting all of you is a validation of that sentiment. That when I, very often when I meet counterparts, when I meet the President, Prime Minister, Foreign Ministers, other ministers, senior officials, mostly, it's almost inevitable. They will always tell me, I know so-and-so. Somebody from Tanzania would say, do you know such a person in Dar es Salaam or such a person in Zanzibar or such a person in Arusha? That when they think of India, they think of a face, they think of a name, they think of an experience, they think of you. That is really what changes the relationship. So my economic plea to all of you is we want to grow our business with Africa, with Tanzania. We want to grow investments, we want to grow exchanges, and you can help us do this. So certainly we will encourage more business events, more exchanges. We can see today that Indian companies are going out more and more. Tomorrow I know that we have a business event as well, and some of those who have come from India for that are here amongst us. But ultimately, a lot of the local guidance, the local feel, the advice, the understanding, this has to come from all of you. My second point is, in terms of how India would build its relationship with Africa. One part of it, as I said, is capacity, but we see many of the similar challenges. We see digital challenges, we see health challenges, we see environmental, climate change challenges. So a lot of what we are doing in India is also something which is relevant to Africa. And certainly in Tanzania's case, I would say relevant to Tanzania. So let me conclude by telling you what is happening in India. And the first point I would make is India is changing and changing very rapidly. So I have a question for you. How many of you have been to India in the last 3 years? Could you raise your hand? Okay. So I would say maybe about half of you have not been to India, maybe more than that, okay, last 3 years. Now why am I asking you this? You know, anybody who comes in today to India, and this actually happens to me, people come into India after a gap and they are struck by the transformation of India. Now, often a visitor, you know, they will naturally come to a big city, they will come to an airport, they will look at the airport. All the airports in India, by the way, are very different from what it was before. They will then drive down a road, the roads are very different from what it was before. Then they will meet people, now they will see, you know, everybody is working on a smartphone, they are globally aware, they will probably ask you where are you coming from, they'll probably give you some views about where you are coming from. This is one part of the change. But if you actually think about it very seriously, between what is happening digitally in India, that this is a country today whose internet, whose digital connectivity, whose smartphone access, whose data consumption is among the highest in the world. Then you look at what is happening in infrastructure. There is an initiative of the Prime Minister called Gati Shakti. Gati Shakti is to take different parts of infrastructure, which is road, rail, power, digital, optical fiber, airports. How do you bring them all together in a connected plan? And then you look today at the social programs. The social program numbers today in India are so big that unless you are actually involved in it, people actually find it difficult to believe those numbers. Because the numbers we are talking about, what we used to say would be 1 million or maybe double digit. Today, almost every one of our programs is in the triple digits. So when we say, you know, during COVID or even now, we give food support. We give food support to 800 million people. 800 million people regularly get food support from the government so that nutrition levels in India are rising rapidly. 450 million people get money in the bank accounts so that they are part of the financial inclusion. During COVID, this is what sustained them. That today, this allows them actually, because a lot of them are women, this allows them a lot of financial freedom. If you look at even the government today for the economically weaker sections, gives the financial support for houses to be built. Today, 35 million houses have been built in the last few years. 35 million houses, and there are roughly 5 people to a house. We are talking of actually 150 million people who had a house which they did not have 9 years ago. If you look today at health coverage, 1/3 of India actually today has access to free and affordable health. So the scale of the change today is something which you have to go and see in India. Even for those of us who live here, live there, the places we visit, any place you go to, if you go after a few months, you can actually see something has changed out there. I mean, I see that often when, you know, the state obviously which I travel to most out of India is Gujarat. So I have a chance, even in a relatively developed area of Gujarat, you can actually see more and more changes. So I mention this to you because this is, you know, when people speak saying, you know, under Modi things have changed. There's a new India in the making. That this is a country which is number 5, it will become number 3 in the global economy. That a lot of problems for which we said, well, you know, that's the way we are. Today there is no challenge, there's no problem which we are not trying to solve. And you can see that in very, very practical ways. I mean, we are actually seeing in innovation and startups. such an enormous surge of activity. When it came to COVID, you had actually made in India vaccines, which was supplied to 100 countries across the world. Telecom, people are talking about telecom revolution, that there is 5G, there is 6G coming. India is actually deploying 5G at the most rapid place. The fastest deployment of 5G which is taking place in the world today is in India. So I cite that to you. So to the half of you who haven't been here, please do go there. To the half of you who have been there, please go there again, please keep going. Because I assure you that the changing India is actually going to be increasingly relevant to the world, that you will see today a much more, I would say, a contributing India, a stronger partner of India. India as a bigger trader, India as a stronger investor, India as a source of technology, of education, as a partner in exchanges. So that is the picture which I wanted to share with you. Once again, really, I thank you all for coming today and for this opportunity to give you a sense both of the relationship as well as what is happening in India. And I think the High Commissioner felt that there would be some comments and questions after this. So I'd be very happy to listen to any advice you have, to respond to any questions you may have, to take in good spirit any comments you have. So let me open up the floor. Thank you very much.
I'll be moderating it.
So I think that gentleman is the
Thank you, sir. Hello. So, sir, actually we received about 48 questions through email and through messages, but I think it would be better that we take questions from here. But thank you for all of those who sent the questions. Many of them have sent comments. Many of them have given suggestions to Honorable Minister, which will pass on to him. But let me now request you to raise your hands and also request you to be brief in your questions. If you have suggestions, if you have any ideas, kindly write it to the Honorable Minister. He responds to people. But here I'll request you to raise your hand for questions only.
I see some hands up.
Mr. Dabe.
Maybe you should give them your mic and use this one. No, you can give them the mic because they're
Namaskar, Your Excellency. Yes. I'm Malhar Dave. I'm representing the Hindu Council of Tanzania as the president. And first of all, much gratitude to you for accepting our invitation. And I know you even had to change your travel mode to arrive here on time. So thank you very much, sir. We had also received a lot of questions, and many of them you have already answered. But one more thing I would like to add, that Shivi should now add Gujarati as one of the language, because now I know you must have picked Gujarati. Sir, we know that India has an additional advantage in its diplomacy of having a very vibrant global diaspora. And as you rightly said here, that a lot of trade and economically we can assist in growing the relationship between our bilateral trade. So sir, my question is that because High Commission is already doing a lot of things. We have seen Sri Vivekananda Cultural Center doing a lot of things. Ayush is doing a lot of things to promote the Indian culture and the Indian way of doing things. But what we can do individually as diaspora members so that the friendship and the relationship between India and Tanzania grows any further. Thank you very much, sir.
Over many years and many countries, I have obviously, friends in diaspora, and it's also something which is very natural to discuss with leaders or politicians or decision makers in other societies. So I want to tell you, there is an image of an Indian diaspora. You know what is that image? Very hard-working people, very law-abiding people, very family-centric people, very, I would say, socially conscious, educated people. This is our image. Okay. I'm telling you this very, very seriously. I mean, I've heard people say this in America, I've heard people say this in Hungary, I've heard people say this in Japan. And if you know, often when I used to work in embassies, there were many other embassies which would be worrying about their communities, the problems of their communities. For us, I mean, I'm now talking 20, 30, 40 years. The community has never been a problem. The community has been a source of strength. And that is a huge difference. So your question, what can we do? Look, one of the, I would say, among the many differences that Narendra Modi has made, you have a Prime Minister who recognizes the value of the diaspora and is prepared to say that publicly, loudly and clearly. Okay? So when he tells the Indian, you know, after all, when he goes out of India, and you've seen, you know, he goes out, he meets people in large numbers, he talks to them. There is a message that he is also sending to the Indian system. He is sending a message to the Indian system saying, look, these are assets, these are people with valuable relationships, with understanding. So you would have seen, you know, I mean, I don't wish to make comparisons, but really think of the last maybe 20 years. And I'm saying this, you know, you may be too polite to say this. I have seen actually how the embassies have also changed in their dealings with the Indian community organizations. How much, you know, more, how much more they are open to working and partnering with them. This is an evolution. It's a journey for us also. So, to me today, you ask what can I do? I would say please keep doing what you are doing, but keep in contact, you know, for us individual members, community organizations, working with our embassies and high commissions, advising them, supporting them. This is really what makes us very different. So I would say that's exactly what I hope you will do more and more.
Okay, so Mr. Kanabar on this side.
Your Excellency, Jaishankarji, good evening. My question, one question is that how do you find Africa playing a role in India's foreign policy? And what is the mutual benefit to both the parties?
You know, I think our relationship with Africa will grow more and more. Today, I'm giving you rough figures. Our trade with Africa is $95 billion. Our investment in Africa is about $75 billion. I can predict very confidently that both of them will grow very rapidly in the coming decade. They will grow rapidly in the coming decade for three reasons. One, Indian economy, Indian businesses are going out more and more. That's one reason. Two, demand in Africa is growing. Now, it is up to us to meet that demand. You know, Africa will have a demand. Now, we have to compete. You know, maybe they'll go to China, maybe they'll go to Europe, or they'll go to Turkey. But if Indian business is more and more competitive, if people are willing to go out more and more, I think some part of that demand, maybe a large part of that demand will be met out of India. And the third is that a lot of what will become important in business today will be technology driven. Technology driven in different ways. I mean, it could be automobiles, it could be health, it could be digital. I think that is where India can make a difference. So, and look, politically, I mean, it's so easy for us really to bond with African governments and the leaders. So, my prediction for our relationship with Africa is a very positive one. But as I said, for us, the bridge that the Indian diaspora represents is something, it's a very unique bridge. Very few countries have such a bridge. So we must use that bridge.
Okay. Let me take one question from the Indian students, and they had sent several questions. So any particular student?
Somebody has their...
Good evening, sir. My name is Aksalza Saji, and my question to you is, what inspired you to write the book, The India Way, Strategy for an Uncertain World? And what message would you like to deliver to your readers? Thank you, sir.
You know, I did 41 years in the Foreign Service. I thought I would have learned something in 41 years. So I felt, okay, after so many years, maybe I should sit down and put it to paper, and hopefully somebody would read it, and maybe they will learn, or maybe they will disagree, and maybe they will debate, because I was at that time, I would say, I thought my professional life was now behind me. I did not expect at that time to become a minister, so this was written when that was not in sight, so that was really the kind of mood in which I wrote the book. Now, what happened was, by the time, writing a book is very difficult. I don't know if any of you have ever written one, because you actually don't know when to finish it. You keep improving it, changing it. So I struggled with it for about a year. Just when I finished writing it, I, to my surprise, was asked by the Prime Minister to join the government. Then I had to sit and say, okay, let me now work on this book. Maybe there's some things I shouldn't be saying now that I'm a minister. So that took a few months more to do. But it was for me it was a good experience, that because I used it to discuss foreign policy with people who are not in the foreign policy business. I did not write it, by the way, for people, I did not write it for other diplomats. I did not write it for my colleagues in the foreign ministry. I wrote it for people who don't do foreign policy. And my hope was that they will take an interest. And I must say, in the last 4 years, I am discovering, traveling around India, going to different parts of India, doesn't even have to be big towns, smaller towns, doesn't even have to be universities, can be professional bodies. There is a lot of interest today among people in how the world works. And I don't think it is only in India. I think it's probably all over the world. That people are understanding today that if something which happens somewhere can make an impact on your life. It could be, it could be something in Ukraine, as I said, it could be COVID, it could be climate change, it could be terrorism. So we are getting more interested in the world, and I thought this was my little contribution to it.
Okay. So
I think
here we have a
there's one more. There's a young man there, I think he wants to ask something.
not
Sure.
audible.
Good evening, sir. I am Shrey Sundar Mohanty, and my question to you is, what are your views on dual citizenship for Indians? Thank you.
Can you repeat it again?
You asked about dual citizenship?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, this is actually an ongoing debate, and just so that people understand in a way the scale of the issue. There are roughly 3.5 crores, about 35 million Indians or people of Indian origin living abroad. About, I would say 60% would have taken another passport. About 40% would still be having an Indian passport. So roughly you can say 2 crores would be citizens of some other country, 1.5 crores, give or take a little bit, would be still Indian nationals. So the issue arises, how do they relate to their country of origin or the country, from where they're not domiciled, where they're living abroad. And it's not a new issue. So some years ago, during Prime Minister Vajpayee's government, in fact, we moved to have, at that time, many of you would be familiar, 2 categories, persons of Indian origin and overseas citizen of India. Then in the last few years we said, having multiple categories doesn't make sense. Let us make it simpler. Let us make it easier for people, because again, one of the big initiatives Prime Minister Modi has led is how does the life of the average person become easier. So in different ways we are trying to make life easy. So today actually the best answer I can give you is that the overseas citizen of India offers that opportunity for people who may be nationals of some other country, Tanzania or Kenya or America or UK, to have certain, I would say, certain access, certain rights, certain privileges in India, including the ability to go in and out of the country very easily. Now, whether there is a debate, should we go beyond that? What about people's, should they have political rights or not? That is an ongoing debate. It's not something which is an easy, there are many pluses and minuses on this issue. So for the moment, actually, overseas citizen is where matters stand.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so can we have somebody, Mr.
Hello,
Asim?
Sir. Sir, my question is, sir, His Excellency.
Where is this coming from?
I'm here, sir.
We'll come back to you.
Good evening, sir. Firstly, welcome to Tanzania. I'm a proud Indian representing LG Electronics in the country. My name is Ashim Wadhwa. You just spoke about how India is developing, how LDI is changing. I personally feel so. I go India every 6 months, and I also personally feel so that India is changing. But you also know the problem of brain drain in the country. And in a few of your youth podcasts, I heard about your views on the reverse brain drain. So can you enlighten your views on the same thing? Thank you.
Okay, just so that all of you know what he's asking about, I was asked in a podcast, what did I feel about the brain drain in India, and what would I advise young Indians about going out of India? Okay, right? That's what you're referring to. So my answer was that that era, that period, when we felt somebody going out of India was a loss to the country, I think that period is behind us. And why am I saying that? Because partly, given travel today, given technology today, given in fact the commitment of the diaspora to promoting change in India, the investments which diaspora is making in India. So if I were actually to look at, let us say, the last 30 years, 40 years, and say, did the diaspora actually abandon India, or did the diaspora actually support India and promote India? I have no doubt in my mind what is the right answer. I think the diaspora has been a huge source of strength to us. And in many ways, I mean, I gave you the, the example in US where in areas like technology, there have been a big connect. But the real critical change is today I see more and more people, and there are numbers to back it up. People going up and down between, living abroad, doing something in India, living in India, doing something abroad. So this is a very different world we are moving into. And it doesn't even have to be something as complex as technology. I mean, many of you travel, I want you to just think about the next time you're on a plane. Very likely, it doesn't have to be an Indian carrier. Chances are high that among the air crew, there will be some Indians. Next time you're on a cruise liner, I don't have the luxury, but maybe some of you would. I assure you, a big part of the staff would be Indian. Or those of you who are in trade, you will see in merchant shipping. We are today among the highest actually contributors to merchant shipping in terms of the crew. So there is a global employment today. And Indians should take advantage of it. Why should Indians restrict their opportunities? And those who work abroad, I think, pick up ideas, pick up experiences. And the other point I would make, every time India has been in difficulty, the diaspora has always come, stood up for India. And this goes back to the nuclear test time. So, I think that's my answer to the young man who asked me the question. I said, look, you're a young person, but that's a very old-fashioned way of looking at the world. That, to me, this is a very different world.
Okay, so we'll take last two questions, sir. It's already 9:15. So somebody back there.
My name is Pratik Saxena. I am working here. Only one question I just want to ask. Basically, you are talking about the business, and you said that some of the businessmen, they are coming from Tanzania, sorry, from India to Tanzania, and they want to invest here. But as we are working here, and if we want to invest in Tanzania, then when we are going to the banks, then they are telling us that NREs are not allowed to get any loans from Indian banks. Whereas the collateral, without collateral loans, limit in India for SMEs are the 5 crore rupees. Can you please advise as a external affairs, Ministry of External Affairs, can they advise to the finance ministry in India if they can support the middle class persons to support a business in Africa or any part of the world? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Let me just make sure I understood your question. What you are saying is that people get loans in India without collateral.
I read that particular article, sir. That
Yes. No. See, depends. That is correct. It is not like everybody gets loans in India without collateral. Certain category of people, for example, we support there's a program called Swanidhi. Under Swanidhi, people in the informal sector who are, people who are street vendors, for example, or who have small businesses, they get loans. So that is a scheme which has been largely meant to promote the informal economy and self-employment, because they disproportionately got hit during the COVID period. But from what I understand, you are asking whether it's possible for an Indian working abroad or living abroad to get a loan from an Indian bank, I assume?
Yes, sir. Because Indian banks, when I spoke to the Indian bank, they are telling us NREs are not allowed. Personal means I am an employee here. Employees are not allowed to get a loan if we want to give them collateral. For example, the FDs, or you can say the bank, or sorry, the home loans, home, etc., etc. So this is the only one question, or you can say the
I take your point, but I think your situation is not the same as the people you are referring to in India, but I note your point.
Okay, we'll take the last question. Okay, I think Mr. Maheshwari.
नमस्कार सर।
नमस्कार।
क्या मैं हिंदी में पूछ सकता हूँ?
हाँ बिल्कुल
जी। मंत्री महोदय, जो यहाँ के किसानों की हालत भारत के किसानों से बहुत ही ज़्यादा खराब है। यहाँ से बहुत एग्रो कमोडिटीज़ इंडिया में इंपोर्ट होती है। अभी हमारे कुछ इंटरनल इश्यू के कारण हम यहाँ का इंपोर्ट कभी रोक देते हैं। तो ऐसी हालत में यहाँ के फार्मरों की हालत बहुत ही नाजुक हो जाती है सर, क्योंकि हमारे अलावा कोई मेनली पल्सेस वगैरह इंपोर्ट करने वाला कोई नहीं इतनी बड़ी क्वांटिटी में। तो क्या हम तंजानिया को स्पेशल स्टेटस दे के एग्रीकल्चर कमोडिटी इंपोर्ट राउंड द ईयर करने की अगर परमिशन दे सके, उससे भी बढ़कर अगर हम ईस्ट अफ्रीका से सर FAT फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट अगर कर सकते हैं तो भारत के उत्पादकों को कम से कम 40% बड़ा मार्केट मिल सकता है सर। थैंक यू वेरी मच, धन्यवाद।
मुझे इस बात की समझ है, मेरे ख्याल से तंजानिया की जो एक्सपोर्ट जो है करीब 95% उनको ड्यूटी फ्री एक्सेस है, मैं करेक्ट? नहीं, अच्छा 98%। जो आप जो एग्रीकल्चर गुड्स की जो बात कर रहे हैं, जैसे आप पिजन पीस जो है, उसमें हम लोग अब पिजन पीस जो है वो अभी ओपन जनरल लाइसेंस में है, माने भारत में कोई भी इंपोर्ट कर सकता है। पर क्योंकि यहाँ हमें पता है कि ये रोजगारी का मामला है और इनको यहाँ थोड़ी प्रेडिक्टेबिलिटी भी चाहिए कि वो जानना चाहेंगे कि भारत अवश्य इसमें इंपोर्ट करेगा, तो हमारे बीच में इसमें एक समझौता है कि कुछ मिनिमम क्वांटिटी है, हम तंजानिया को हम कमिट कर चुके हैं कि कम से कम हम उतना तो इंपोर्ट करेंगे। उसके अलावा कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें हैं, मैं माने उल्टा कहूँगा कि तंजानिया की परफॉर्मेंस बहुत अच्छी है। जैसे अभी एवोकाडो है, अब हम जो हैं तंजानिया हमारा मेन एवोकाडो एक्सपोर्टर बन चुका है। तो हमारे यहाँ देखिए तंजानिया के बारे में अगर आप हमारी ट्रेड फिगर्स देखेंगे, और इसमें भी कुछ विवाद है कि असली आंकड़े क्या हैं, जो हमारे आंकड़े थोड़ा ज़्यादा दिखाते हैं, उनके कम दिखाते हैं, पर जो भी है, पर हम जो हैं मेरे ख्याल से तंजानिया के सबसे बड़े एक्सपोर्ट मार्केट हैं भारत। जी सर। और अगर इसमें एग्रीकल्चर माने पिजन पीस के अलावा बाकी चीज़ फ्रूट्स वेजिटेबल्स, इसमें जहाँ संभावना है, मुझे लगता है कि भारत जैसा मार्केट जो है इसको ज़रूर एक्सेस तो देंगे, क्योंकि टंजानिया LDC है, लीस्ट डेवलप्ड कंट्री है, तो उनके खिलाफ कुछ मुझे नहीं लगता कि अन्याय होगा।
सर, जब ये कोटा सिस्टम है तो उसमें जो एक्सपोर्टर और स्टॉकिस्ट हैं वही कमाते हैं, उसमें फार्मरों को बेनिफिट नहीं मिलता सर।
नहीं, अब देखिए ऐसा है, वो तो ट्रेड व्यापार का मामला है ना यहाँ। अब यहाँ जो व्यापारी करते हैं और क्या बेनिफिट पास ऑन करते हैं वो तो यहाँ का मामला है। हमारे साइड से तो हम इतना आश्वासन दे सकते हैं कि हमें इंपोर्ट करना चाहिए, नहीं करना चाहिए, किस मात्रा में करना चाहिए, उसमें तो हम हमारा बहुत सकारात्मक, अगर आप देखें कि क्योंकि हमने जो मिनिमम क्वांटिटी जो कमिट कर रखा वो छोटा क्वांटिटी नहीं है।
नहीं, सही है सर।
तो यहाँ जो रिफॉर्म जो लाने हैं यहाँ तो आपको यहाँ लाना होगा ना, वो भारत तो नहीं कर सकता।
जी सर, एक और क्वेश्चन ऐड कर सकता हूँ सर?
I think, sir, we have run out of time, and then there are other programs also after that. So thank you very much. I just want to point out that we also have friends from other states, other regions. I see friends from Mwanja, friends from Arusa, Tanga. Thank you everybody for coming here.